In your opinion, what does it mean to be a Gen Z Asian American in 2020?
Due to the recent social justice movements, we are beginning to challenge the opinions and thoughts of our parents and now formulating our own personal opinions.
Our generation has exhibited such a strong passion for social justice and creating change within our communities. And as young people, I feel like it's our responsibility to make the world a better place.
Social justice issues or politics or even voting in general, I definitely feel like it's up to me and it's up to my peers to really change that and be able to kind of make that change possible.
Crafting an entirely different type of cultural identity and community for ourselves. And so I think that draws us together into a community.
I feel like we're very connected in terms of our cultural identities and the struggles we face being BIPOC in America.
Given the recent events and just in general all of 2020, I think Asian Americans are reflecting on what it means to be an Asian American, feeling that pull with our Asian identity and our American culture.
Which is why you find us simultaneously trying to reestablish a connection with our culture and our family's homeland, while also trying to bridge that with where we want our community to go into the future.
You know, we're living through such unprecedented times. There's a pandemic going on, and we're at a place right now where our government and our leadership really isn't doing the job it should be doing when tackling this kind of stuff.
We can only discover what we want and get to where we want with each other's help and stories.
As someone who's part of a community who's been historically underrepresented in America, and as someone who's so passionate about this, I definitely feel like it's up to me and it's up to our generation to really try and solve these problems and these issues of today.
I think that we have a lot of potential for greatness and success, and we're now finding ourselves through our interests and our passions.
I think Gen Z Asian Americans hold so much power, and I really think we can change the world.
How do you feel about mental health in terms of Asian culture?
There's slim to none mental health representation in the Asian culture.
Asian American families in general are so work-oriented and so focused on achievements and results, almost like there's no room for anything else. And it's surprising how many kids have, mental health issues in our generation and just Asian Americans in general, because a lot of us don't really show it.
Mental health is definitely pretty highly stigmatized in the Asian community.
Mental health isn't really acknowledged in the Asian community. And if it is, it's usually seen as a sign of weakness or a source of shame. There's definitely a stigma attached to mental illness, especially in the Asian community, and it results in people refusing to get professional help because they refuse to acknowledge they even have an illness.
For me personally, due to the lack of mental health representation in Asian culture, it has prompted me to discover what it means to love myself and what it means to care for myself.
I know I experienced that growing up with my mother. She and I have both suffered from anxiety, depression, and obsessive compulsive disorder, but she wanted to treat it like something that didn't need to be treated, like something that we were meant to suffer through or endure. And so when I needed professional help, she outright refused. It wasn't until I got a little older and I kind of demanded that my mental health be addressed, and I went and sought out a therapist and all of that I was able to really find ways to validate my experiences with my mental health.
A lot of Asian Americans were born and raised to think that whatever mental health problems that they have, or even social health problems that they have, are their fault, and it's up to them to fix it and it's up to them to solve it, which is a terrible mindset and is something that we really need to work on. I definitely feel like has to be some work done in that area by our generation or our next generation to solve that issue.
Asian community emphasizes that the normal thing to do is to just toughen up. I definitely think there's an issue with how mental illness is viewed, since it results in so many people having to suffer in silence. And I know it'll take a lot to even attempt to eliminate that stigma, since it's so deeply rooted in Asian culture. However, I really hope that stigma is eliminated.
My mom, she has grown so much with how she approaches mental health, both mine and hers. And so I do have a lot of hope, though, for the destigmatizing of mental health in the Asian community.
I do believe that Gen Z will be the generation that normalizes mental health in our culture. So I'm hopeful that future generations will feel okay and safe coming to us about their struggles.
How in touch do you feel you are with your cultural identity?
I feel like I'm very in touch with my cultural identity, but I know I still have a lot to learn.
I feel like I'm really in touch with my cultural identity, being a Chinese, Taiwanese, Asian American.
I would say that I am becoming very much so in touch with my culture, but it definitely took a long journey to get to where I am today, and I have a much longer journey ahead of me.
I'm gonna be honest, this is something that I have really struggled with throughout my entire life because my parents immigrated here. I was born and raised in America, and I've only been to India to see my extended family less than a handful of times. I often feel very disconnected to that portion of my family, and I feel disconnected to my religion and my identity and just kind of my family in general. And growing up in America, being a race that isn't white, you get teased and you get made fun of for how you look, what you do, your religion, but it's almost kind of the same in India too. When you show up to meet your family with an American accent, when you wear different clothes that aren't the norm, when you don't know how to speak your own language. And most times I usually feel like I'm, walking a tightrope, and on one side there's America and the other side is India, and I'm always trying to find the balance between the two. And most times I feel out of place in both areas. I feel like I'm too Indian for America, but I'm too American for India.
I'm very grateful to my parents for immersing me in my culture early on and actively working to make my culture a big part of who I am today. They fed me Filipino food, exposed me to Filipino movies and teleseries or shows, spoke my native language at home, and overall tried to immerse me in my culture as much as they could. In addition, I had the privilege of growing up in a predominantly Filipino town, and in an environment where I was mostly surrounded by people of my own culture. This contributed to me feeling as at home as I could in a country that wasn't really my home country. One of my main shortcomings in connecting with my cultural identity is not being able to speak my native language, but I definitely want to work on that and learn it while I still can.
I've been fortunate enough to visit Asia multiple times, and although my mom is from Beijing, I've only visited there once, but I have been lucky enough to have gone to Taiwan many times. And for me, I connect the best with my culture through food. Having grandparents living in New Jersey, it has allowed me to learn Chinese straight from them and really immerse myself in all different aspects of the Asian identity.
When I was younger, I definitely did not have the sort of connection that I have now. I'm mixed, so my dad is white. And on top of that, my mom came here at a really young age. She was a pre-adolescent, and so her grasp of her culture and her language was not the strongest. And with the conditioning, education, and racism she had to go through here, it made her grasp of her language and culture, fade away even more. And so the only experiences I really had with my heritage growing up were when we went to see my mom's family. I was growing up with a white dad and a mom who didn't have much of her own culture to pass on to me in a predominantly white town. And so it wasn't until I was a senior in high school and an adult now that I've really sought to embrace and understand my culture and where I'm from. And so I've taken it upon myself to learn my language and my history. It is an incredibly enriching journey, and I can't wait to continue on with it. I can't wait to see where it leads me.
I've tried to figure out a way of how to balance both my identities and how to, balance being American but also being Asian and being Indian and being South Asian. And how do I best represent both aspects of my identity without, one proceeding over the other? And I think that's something that a lot of immigrant children struggle with, especially when your family is so far away and you grow up where, people don't really look like you and you don't really have a lot of people to help teach you about, your religion and your language and your culture.
Overall, I know I still have a lot to learn about my culture and my history, but I'm excited to learn as much as I can and take everything in.
If there was something you could tell your ancestors, what would it be?
I hope that you're proud of me. I hope that I was able to contribute something to this world that would make you happy. I hope that I could do something in this world that would make you proud of me. And I hope that I could continue, even if you're not here, even if you can't see me, even if I wasn't able to get to know you in the way that maybe my parents have or my grandparents have.
What is your perception of America? And could you have imagined your descendants will be living in a whole other country with a diverse population? How their environment and their personal relationship with their friends and their family has affected their perception of the world and how they deal with mental health. And finally, I would thank them for just existing, because without them, there wouldn't be me. And I would also tell them that I'm so grateful to be living in America with amazing parents that go out of their way to connect me to my cultural identity and to my ancestors.
If I could tell them anything, I would probably tell them that I hope I'm fulfilling their dreams. I feel like a common fear among immigrant children is disappointing their family, their parents, or their ancestors in general. And if I could tell my ancestors anything, I would probably tell them that I hope they know that I'm truly trying to be the best I can be, trying to make them proud, and trying not to disappoint them and waste their sacrifices and what they have worked for.
I've never gone back to Vietnam, and my mother's never gone back either. And so, I really want to know everything about the place. I want to know what it looks and sounds and smells and tastes like. And I am manifesting that I will live there by my mid to late 20s. So, that will happen. But until then, I have so many questions that my mom can't even really answer.